What if I told you the singer of a quintessential hair band secretly ran the most notorious, dirt-dishing, career-ending gossip website of the early internet era? They hit number 3 on MTV, nestled between Guns N' Roses and Metallica, only to have their label drop them months later because their sound was suddenly poison. No pun intended. Tuff built a following on a pretty boy image, while their singer was a powerlifting brute who named his own record label, Record Labels Suck. Here's how a band that was almost the next big thing became the scene's most self-aware historians, saboteurs, and ultimate survivors.
Like, subscribe, thank you.
So this whole thing starts back in '85, in the sun-scorched suburban scrawl of Phoenix, Arizona, a place more known for golf courses and heat stroke than for rock and roll decadence. And this is where a couple guys, guitarist Jorge DeSaint and bassist Todd Chase, decide that they want to be rock stars. They start a band called Tuff, Tuff. And at first, they're not the lipstick and hairspray-soaked creatures they would become famous for. Nope. They were heavier, playing the local dives, opening for thrash bands like Flotsam and Jetsam. But Phoenix was never going to be big enough. The real action, the real sleaze, was a 6-hour drive west in LA. Before they could get there, though, they had to figure out who was actually going to be in the band. And this is where the story gets weird really fast. After burning through a couple of early members, they find a vocalist named Terry Fox. He joins, things seem to be gelling, and then just as quickly he quits. Now, in the rock and roll world, singers usually quit to start a solo career, join a bigger band, or because they've had a dramatic, ego-fueled fist fight with the guitar player. Terry Fox did none of these things. He quit Tuff to pursue a career as a professional ice skater. You cannot make this stuff up. One minute you're screaming into a microphone in the sweaty rock club, and the next you're attempting to do a triple axel in sequins. It was a sign of the beautiful absurdity to come. So after the ice skating incident, they needed a new frontman, and so they found one in a guy with a shriek that could peel paint, Jim Gillette. With Gillette, they recorded an EP called Knock Yourself Out, a 4-song affair that has since been described with magnificent accuracy as sounding like an Eastern European version of Poison. It was a glorious, unholy racket, but Jim Gillette, being a man of colossal ambition and even more colossal vocal cords, didn't stick around long either. He soon left to form his own band, Nitro, a group legendary for its sheer over-the-top technical absurdity and Gillette's glass-shattering scream. So Tuff was once again without a singer. This revolving door of frontmen would have killed a lesser band, but Tuff was, if nothing else, persistent. And in 1987, their persistence paid off. They found their guy. His name was Stevie Rochelle, a kid from Wisconsin who had the look, the voice, and most importantly, the drive. He adopted the stage name to avoid being confused with the half-dozen other Steves in rock at the time, snatching Rochelle from a childhood sweetheart's middle name. So with Rochelle on board, the classic Tuff lineup was finally cemented. And they did what every aspiring glam band did in '87. Packed their bags, headed off to the Sunset Strip. Now, the Strip in the late '80s was a spectacle of beautiful, chemically enhanced chaos. It was a nightly parade of teased hair, ripped denim, and Tuff dove in head first. They played the very first show with Stevie Rochelle opening for Warrant at the legendary Roxy Theater. Soon they were headlining the Troubadour, and they were generating a buzz, a serious one. People were whispering that they could be the next Motley Crue or Poison, and they leaned into it hard. Before they even had a record deal, they're touring the country in a proper $30,000 tour bus, bankrolled by who knows what. They're sending out ridiculously professional press kits to clubs, complete with massive full-color posters shot by big-name photographers. They looked the part, they acted the part, and damn well they were determined to will themselves into stardom. Now, Stevie Rochelle, who in later years would be a big 215-pound dude who could bench press 300 pounds, fully embraced the pretty boy aesthetic of the era. The lifestyle was just as excessive as the look. One former fan from those days recalled stories of finding shampoo for crabs in the band members' showers, a perfect grimy little snapshot of the glorious lack of hygiene and monogamy that defined the scene during those days. Tuff were living the dream, or at least a very convincing and fairly itchy imitation of it. For years they grinded it out, releasing demos, building that fan base 1 gig at a time. The industry took notice, but in the slow, cautious way that giant record labels do. A deal was apparently on the table in '89, but the label got cold feet and dragged the process out. It wasn't until the summer of 1990 that they finally officially signed on the dotted line with Atlantic Records. The dream was finally happening. They were on a major label, hired a big shot producer, Howard Benson, to helm their debut album. He's been mentioned many times throughout my videos. He's done a lot of stuff back in those days. The recording sessions began the day after Christmas in 1990. They were meticulous, with Benson pushing Rochelle to refine his lyrics, tighten up the songs. The album was mixed by a guy named Sir Arthur Payson, a name so ridiculously regal for a rock producer that many assumed it was a pseudonym for a more famous musician, but no, he was a real guy who just preferred to stay out of the limelight. So in May of 91, What Comes Around Goes Around was finally unleashed upon the world. And the reviews were, well, mixed. Some critics dismissed it as generic cookie cutter glam rock that had missed its moment. But for the fans, it was a total blast. Fun, hook-filled slice of rock and roll. And it had a secret weapon. That weapon was a power ballad, the essential currency of any late 80s rock band. And theirs was called I Hate Kissing You Goodbye. It was huge, emotional, and ridiculously catchy. The music video, the masterpiece of dramatic pouting and wind machine-assisted hair, was sent to MTV. And then the impossible happened. It became a smash hit on Dial MTV, the network's daily video request show. It climbed the charts, eventually landing at the number 3 spot right behind two little bands named Guns N' Roses and Metallica. Now, for a band that had been slogging it out for 6 years, this was like winning the lotto. They're finally on the big stage, rubbing shoulders with the heroes. The success propelled them across the Atlantic for a tour in England. They had arrived for about 15 minutes, because while Tuff was celebrating their first taste of mainstream success, a seismic shift was happening in the music world. A few hundred miles up the coast in Seattle, a flannel-clad trio led by a disgruntled blonde dude named Kurt Cobain was about to drop a bomb on the entire music industry, and that bomb was called Nevermind. And the rise of Nirvana and the grunge movement wasn't just a change in musical taste, it was really a hostile takeover. Suddenly the flashy, fun-loving, party-all-night ethos of glam metal seemed ridiculous. Actually really seemed totally uncool during that time. The big hair, makeup, power ballads, they're all a punchline overnight. Fans traded those leather pants for ripped jeans, and the music industry, ever the soulless trend chaser, pivoted so fast it gave itself whiplash. Atlantic Records, the very label that had just released Tuff's hit album, saw the writing on the wall. So they dropped the band in '92, just months after they had recorded a second album's worth of material. To add insult to injury, Atlantic's new golden child, their answer to Nirvana, was Stone Temple Pilots. The party was officially over. The rug had been pulled out from underneath them, and the fall was brutal. The eternal strife began almost immediately. Bassist and co-founder Todd Chase, who was getting into heavier music like Pantera and Tool, saw the glam ship sinking and jumped overboard at the end of '91. The band that had just been on top of the world was now hemorrhaging members and had no record label. Undeterred, Stevie and Rochelle refused to let the dream die. In the early of '93, they managed to snag a deal with a smaller label, IRS Grand Slam Records, and this seemed like a second chance, a total lifeline. But within a year, the parent company, IRS Records, went bankrupt, and the entire label folded. This was a comical string of bad luck. Most people would have given up, sold their gear, gotten a job managing a Cinnabon. Stevie Rochelle was not most people. His manager at the time had nicknamed him Stevie Rochelle from Hell because of his relentless work ethic, and now he was about to prove it. If the record labels wouldn't have him, then he'd just do it himself. So in '94, he founded his own label, RLS Records. The initial stood for Rochelle's Lyrics and Songs, but it also had a much more fitting, cathartic meaning. Record labels suck. Operating as a one-man army out of his garage, he prepared to release Tuff's next album. This new record, initially titled Fist First, was a deliberate move away from their pop metal sound. It was heavier, angrier, and more in line with the changing times. The problem was nobody wanted it. Not the labels, not the consumers. The glam fans thought it was too heavy, and the new grunge fans wouldn't touch a band like Tuff with a 10-foot pole, so it ended up flopping commercially. By the end of '95, with no label support and a revolving door of musicians, Stevie and Jorge, the last men standing, finally put Tuff on ice. Now, for a few years, it seemed that was the end of the story. But Stevie wasn't done with the music industry. He just found a new way to terrorize it. In '98, he co-founded a website called Metal Sludge. In the early days of the internet, it was a revolutionary and completely crazy platform. It was a gossip site for the rock world, a place for unfiltered interviews, brutal album reviews, scandalous stories. Rochelle's involvement was anonymous at first, which allowed him to write with a savage, unbiased honesty, even about his own group. Metal-Sludge became infamous for its 20 questions interviews, where musicians were asked brutally frank and often embarrassing questions about their pasts, and, of course, for its legendary penis chart, a user-submitted ranking of rock stars based upon their endowment. It was crass, juvenile, and it was absolutely essential reading for a lot of people. The site regularly broke major news stories, like band reunions, lineup changes, long before the mainstream music press, and it was Stevie's ultimate revenge on the industry that he cast him aside. He couldn't get on the charts, so he created a platform to dictate the conversation. So as the new millennium dawned, the cultural cringe around 80s metal started to fade. Nostalgia started setting in, and a new appreciation for the genre was emerging. Seizing the moment, Stevie and Rochelle relaunched Tuff in 2001. To mark their return, they released a compilation album called The History of Tuff. Tucked away in that album was a new track, a song that would become the band's unlikely anthem for the 21st century. It was called American Hair Band, a hilarious and brutally self-aware parody of Kid Rock's hit American Badass, and it was a middle finger to the critics and a love letter to the scene that birthed them. Rochelle rapped lyrics like "Give Pearl Jam and Eddie a big fuck you," and humorously owned their lack of commercial success with the line, "I went platinum 0 times. Total stroke of genius." The song became an underground cult hit, getting radio play and proving that Tuff and Stevie and Rochelle still had a sense of humor and a fight left in them. However, this new chapter wasn't without its own set of professional hazards. In 2003, the band got a huge offer. $10,000 to fly to Hungary and play a massive festival alongside legends like Twisted Sister and the Scorpions. Huge opportunity. Stevie, ever the promoter, immediately went to work, documenting the whole process. He had custom tour shirts printed up and arranged international flights for the entire group, fronted his own money for much of it, including $1,500 for the merchandise. Everything was set, and then the day before they were scheduled to fly out, the entire festival was abruptly canceled. It was a disaster, a perfect example of the shady, fly-by-night nature of the music business. Rochelle was out a significant amount of cash and left holding a box full of useless t-shirts. But after weeks of persistent, aggressive negotiation with the promoter, he managed to recoup his losses. Small victory that really showed the constant battle and trust issues inherent in being a working musician. Now, in the years since, Tuff has settled into a comfortable groove. They've become what you might call a legacy act, or more accurately, a part-time band. Original bassist Todd Chase even returned in 2008 after a 15-year absence. They don't tour relentlessly anymore. Instead, they do about 15 to 30 flyaway dates a year, playing their greatest hits for nostalgic fans at 80s metal festivals like the M3 Music Festival and Monsters of Rock Cruise. And these festivals have become their bread and butter. A reliable circuit where they're celebrated, not dismissed. In 2021, Steve Rochelle, ever the hustler, managed to personally secure the master tapes for What Comes Around Goes Around from Warner Music Group after months of pestering them, and released the 30th anniversary edition on his own RLS Records. The story came full circle in August of 2024 when original drummer Michael Lean, who had been gone for over 30 years, reunited with the band on stage at the Whiskey, the very heart of the Sunset Strip where their journey began. Tuff may not have conquered the world, but against all odds, in the face of ice skating singers, grunge-fueled apocalypse, and bankrupt record labels, Tuff is still standing strong.